Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. She raised a plastic cup toward the string lights and said it like a punchline. He's done. Marriage is over. Laughter scattered, quick and brittle, the kind people use when they're not sure whether they should laugh. I'm Marcus Vale, 39, a construction project manager in Dallas. I was at my buddy Aaron's backyard birthday, standing at the grill with a pair of tongs, and my wife was performing for a semicircle of friends who loved a good scene. I set the tongs on the table, wiped my hand on a dish towel, nodded to Aaron, and walked out through the side gate like I'd just remembered I left headlights on somewhere. A little stunned, but steady. The strange thing is that none of it surprised me. For weeks something had been leaning off center. Eye contact got shorter. Girls' night got longer. I'd catch her testing lines on me. Little jokes with blunt edges, then trying them again later with an audience. She started narrating me to our friends in the way people narrate an appliance. Reliable, boring, useful only when it's needed. I heard, "You're so intense," 3 times in a week. Always said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I stopped texting first 3 days before the party and let the silence measure itself. She didn't notice until the second day, then acted like my restraint proved her point. There's a mood you learn to recognize on job sites, the one that shows up 10 minutes before a safety incident. People get noisy, careless with their hands, interested in spectators. That's how the month felt at home. She changed her phone password and called it privacy, started treating our kitchen like a co-working space where I needed to book time. When I suggested dinner, she said I should work on my clinginess, loud enough for a barista to hear. Later that night, she stood in the doorway and asked if I was mad. I told her I was finished rewarding disrespect with discussion. She rolled her eyes like it was a dad joke. I didn't correct her. A week later, I opened a note on my phone and titled it, Boundaries. Nothing dramatic, just a list that reminded me how to treat myself when other people forgot. The day of Aaron's party, I went for a run before the sun turned the sidewalks into griddles. 6 miles, steady pace, lungs working hard enough to quiet my mind. I showered, folded the towel the same way I always do, and tossed a bag of tortilla chips into the truck because I knew she'd forget to bring anything, and I was tired of being the guy who shows up empty-handed. On the drive, I thought about roofs and permits in Monday's schedule. I didn't think about us. There was no point dragging a toolbox to a fire pit. Aaron's place sits in a pocket of older houses where the hardwood trees make a ceiling out of August. I carried the chips around back and could smell charcoal and sunscreen and cologne that cost more than a decent circular saw. The music was one of those summer playlists everyone pretends to hate while they hum along. I found the grill, lifted the lid, and focused on temperature. I always feel calmer with heat I can control. She arrived 20 minutes later, laughing before she reached anyone. That bright performer's laugh that says, "Watch me." She didn't ask if I needed a refill or if I wanted a plate. She floated from cluster to cluster like a drone taking footage. The first time she tested the crowd, it was a soft jab. "Don't mind Marcus. He treats weekends like a stand-up meeting." They laughed. I flipped chicken and let the line hang. The second time, she went bigger. "He schedules romance like an oil change." More laughter, relief laughter, the kind that thanks the speaker for aiming at someone else. I watched grease flare and settled it with the lid. A woman I barely knew asked if I was okay. I told her everything was functioning within normal parameters. She smiled like she wasn't sure that counted. When Aaron called for toast time, people circled up under the lights. Someone joked about his age. Someone else promised him a golf game they'd never schedule. My wife reached for the center like it belonged to her, 1 foot on the flagstone that made her an inch taller. She lifted the cup, pulled her shoulders back, and looked at me the way you look at a microphone. The line came out smooth, practiced. "He's done. Marriage is over." She gave it a beat so the laugh could arrive on schedule. It did. I felt the first little break in the circle, a split-second cut between what people think they know and what they just watched. A man can make a lot of mistakes in a moment like that. He can ask why. He can produce evidence. He can beg a packed patio to consider context. He can hand his dignity to the room in exchange for a correction that won't come. I did none of that. I smiled. Not a smile of agreement, just a small acknowledgement that the sentence had landed where she aimed it, and then I turned. I handed the spatula to Aaron because it was his party. I set my beer down because I don't litter. I said nothing because the only thing worth saying had already been said. The side gate squeaked and caught on its own frame the way I always tell homeowners to sand before a party. Gravel shifted under my shoes. The night air felt cooler on the other side of the fence. I heard the music keep playing. I heard the laugh do what it always does, find another target and move on. I walked to the truck and let the quiet fill in. Sometimes silence isn't the absence of a response. Sometimes it's the entire message. Driving home felt like leaving a job site where the plan got rewritten mid-pour. You don't argue with wet concrete. You just stop adding water and mark up the change order. Headlights ribboned along the service road. A sign for the belt line flashed by. I thought about the first time she told a joke at my expense and how I had laughed along because it seemed easier than drawing a line with a room listening. I thought about the second time and the third, the way repetition makes any shape permanent. I thought about how many times I had turned disrespect into a workshop. I kept both hands on the wheel and let the habit die a little. At a red light, I glanced at the screen and saw the first message arrive. 3 dots. Then a bubble. OMG, relax, it was a joke. Another one. You're embarrassing me. Then a string of confetti emojis from someone who loves being adjacent to someone else's edge. I set the phone face down on the console and watched the light go green. My father taught me to keep a torque wrench in the truck and my composure in public. He said the only time to raise your voice is when you need someone to hear you over machinery. That rule still holds. Back at the house, I put the tortilla chips on the counter because they were unopened and I refused to waste $10 just to make a point to nobody. I rinsed my hands and wiped the sink dry until it squeaked. Old habit. I took off my wedding ring and set it on the dresser. I'm good at inventory. I checked the front door latch, the window locks, the oven knob. I poured water into a glass and drank it standing up. I brushed my teeth. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long minute and breathed through my nose until the thud in my chest settled into something you can measure with a watch. The last thing I did before I turned out the light was open the boundaries note and add one line. Public endings count. It wasn't rage, not even sadness exactly. It was the clean relief of knowing what kind of problem you're solving. In my work, once you name the failure, you stop guessing and start building. That's where the night left me, done with guessing. I placed the phone face down again. Somewhere across town the party moved on to cake, and someone told a story that made everybody clap. I didn't need to hear it. If there's a moral in any of this, I don't have it yet. I have a gate that closes with a tired hinge, a truck that starts when I turn the key, a body that runs 6 miles when the sidewalk is still forgiving, a note on my phone with a list I'm finally using. I have a wife who needed a crowd to validate a sentence, and a backbone that doesn't bend for applause. Something was off, yes. It still is. But the part of me that kept asking what I did wrong went quiet under those lights. She had her toast. I had my exit. Tomorrow would be tomorrow, and I'd meet it without offering anyone a second take. The first ping hit before I cleared the neighborhood. Confetti emojis, a crying laugh face, and a line that tried to turn a statement into a skit. OMG, relax, it was a joke. Another ping stacked right under it. Come back. You're being dramatic. I let the screen glow out and kept driving. I've learned this about pressure. It looks for the crack you show it. I wasn't offering one. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the group chat had found its rhythm. A chorus of sidelines. He's sensitive. He made it weird. A screenshot of a half-filled cup under the lights. Captioned, somebody can't take a joke. I walked in, set my keys on the dish by the door, and changed into running shoes. 5 miles, steady, no music. The night air cut clean lines through the heat. I felt the pulse climb and then settle, the way rebar settles inside a pour when you stop shaking the form. When I came back, I responded once. I heard you clearly. Sent. Thread muted. Her mother called while I was in the shower. Voicemail, brisk and apologetic in the same breath. Misunderstandings happen. She gets carried away. Don't make a thing bigger than it is. I saved it without replying. A man can be generous with silence when he respects his time. I dried off, poured water, and put the spare key she kept in the planter on the entry table where anyone could see it. You inventory what's in your house and what doesn't belong. Triangulation came next. The host texted me a simple, "You good?" I said, "I'm home. Thanks for the invite." Left the grill clean. He answered with a thumbs up and nothing else. A friend of hers tried for moral authority. "You embarrassed her by walking out." I replied once. She ended it publicly. Then I archived the thread. If you answer every angle, you start spinning like a fan with a bent blade. I don't do wobble. She shifted tactics. A selfie in the bathroom at the party, makeup touched up, captioned, "Long night. Should have stayed home LOL." Subtext: rewrite the scene before people replay it in their heads. I wiped the countertop and folded a towel and set a glass of water by the bed. I've been in enough drywalled rooms to know the difference between noise and structure. The story built at my house tonight wasn't for the internet. It was for my calendar. Her number popped up at 11:21. I let it ring out. A text followed. Answer: "We need to talk." I typed, 10 a.m. here. Logistics only. She responded with 3 question marks and a voice message I didn't open. Another text hit 2 minutes later. Unlock the door. I'm coming over. At 11:38, tires shushed on the curb and footsteps hit the walk like she expected an audience. The bell rang twice, fast. I clicked the chain, opened 4 inches, and stood in the opening. Up close, the party softened off her face. The voice was small. I didn't mean it. I kept mine level. You set it into a circle. That counts. Her eyes moved past me into the house, looking for a couch and a conversation. We'll handle logistics at 10, I said. After that, we'll decide the next step. She reached for the chain, not touching, just close enough to broadcast intention. Don't do this. I shook my head once. Already done for tonight. Chain slid. Door closed. Pressure hates doors that close. It prefers the cushion of maybe. The phone vibrated on the kitchen table like a trapped insect. Why are you acting like this? You're being cold. You left me there. Then an attempt at deflection. People are talking. Just fix it. I turned the phone face down and made a short list on paper because ink slows your thinking to the speed of judgment. Morning, separate autopays, calendar a consult, move the title binder to my office safe, pull the emergency card from the glove box she never checks. At midnight, the apologies arrived dressed as reasons. It was supposed to be funny. I was stressed. You take things too literally. I poured another glass of water and stared at the boundaries note I'd started a week earlier. I added 2 lines. Public declarations equal decisions. No late-night negotiations. The house was quiet in that settled way newly built frames get when the AC cycles off. I locked the screen door, checked the back slider, and left the hall light on low. Her mother tried again at 12:17, this time with a text that wove history into the present like a net. She's always had a big mouth. She didn't mean you. She meant the bit. I answered once. I'm not a bit. Then I put the phone on Do Not Disturb and slid it under a legal pad. I've seen men talk themselves out of dignity by narrating the weather. I went to bed. Sleep came in slices. Each time I woke, I felt for chaos and found only quiet. At 2:03 a.m., friend of hers posted a boomerang of sparklers and captions about epic nights. At 2:19, another message. Are you with someone? Pressure tests for jealousy when it can't find guilt. The clock clicked toward 3. I counted my breaths and matched them to the slow tick of the ceiling fan. Lungs, heart, tick. When I finally slept, it was the kind with no dreams, just a long floor of black and then morning. At 7, I made coffee, black, 2 mugs. Not a gesture, a habit. I left one on the counter for myself later and took the first outside, sat on the porch where the street is still soft and unopinionated. That's where the host texted again. For what it's worth, you handled it clean. I wrote back. Had a good time until I didn't. Appreciate you. He sent a single word. Respect. Sun hit the neighbor's truck at the right angle and turned it into a mirror. I looked like a man who'd slept maybe 5 hours but didn't know anyone a conversation about it. I went inside, set a second glass of water by the sink, and drew a line down a notepad. Left column, immediate. Right column, later, if necessary. Immediate. 10 a.m. split autopays. Consolidate subscriptions, set a rule for unannounced visits. Later, counseling with terms or separation with civility. No details beyond the headline. Details are for people who don't know their terms yet. More messages slid under the door of silence. So now you're ghosting your wife? You're making me the bad guy. You always do this control thing. That last one almost made me laugh. Control isn't loud. It's the absence of drama where drama expects applause. I let the kettle cool on the back burner. I shaved. I ironed a shirt like it was any workday. You don't meet escalation in pajamas. At 9:52, she texted. Here. At 9:55, the bell went. One press. I let her wait until 9:58, then unlatched the deadbolt and opened the door without fanfare. No hug. The table was cleared except for a pen and a notepad. Her eyes scanned for softness and found lines instead. She started with volume, then shifted to tears when volume didn't move the line. I didn't mirror either. "We'll talk at 10, I said again, the way you repeat a schedule to a subcontractor who likes to improvise. She stood there with all the energy of last night pooled in her shoulders, ready to spill into the room if I stepped back even an inch. I didn't step. 10 was 2 minutes away. Pressure was on the porch, out of breath. Silence stood next to me with a clipboard. I held the door where it was and met her eyes the way you meet a level to a stud. Either it's plumb or it isn't. The bell of my phone alarm chimed from the kitchen. 10 a.m. I nodded once and unhooked the chain. The door swung to its stop. We were going to talk about the cost of words, the price of boundaries, and the schedule they keep when you mean them. At 10 sharp, I opened the door and let her in only as far as the kitchen table. The blinds were open. The surface was clear except for a notepad, a pen, and 2 glasses of water. I sat, motioned to the chair across from me, and kept my voice even. She started with a half smile and a trembling shoulder, hoping I'd step into the old rhythm where I soothe and she rewrites. She tried to laugh. It landed like silverware on tile. I slid the top page across the table. 3 lines, printed before she arrived. 1. Personal items. Pickup window today, 6 to 7 p.m., otherwise boxed and scheduled for handoff. 2. Shared expenses, split by noon. I'll remove my payment methods from anything not essential to the mortgage and utilities. 3. Communications, email only, no phone calls after 8 p.m. She stared at the page like it was an unfamiliar language. "It was a joke," she said, softer now. I nodded once. "This is serious." She waited for me to say how hurt I was, to give her a rope she could climb back in on. Silence replaced rope. There's a power in doing nothing extra. I've spent 19 years managing projects where everyone wants to add one more exception, one more accommodation, one more time we bend the schedule, because someone's feelings got ahead of the plans. That's how structures fail, by permission, not catastrophe. She asked if we could talk it out, her words suggesting campus therapy and scented candles. I said, "We'll talk schedule and property. The rest is not today." She reached for my hand. I folded mine on the table. "Please don't perform," I added. Calm. Factual. Final. The next hour was paperwork with a pulse. I opened our shared accounts on my laptop and removed authorized user access where it existed. I paused and read the numbers like I was walking a plumb line. Steady, no shakes. Autopays, split. Streaming, her email added, mine removed. Family phone plan. I started a new account for myself and queued the port over for 5 p.m. She tried to make a joke about me divorcing Netflix. I moved to the guest room without words. The master stayed pristine, exactly as I left it last night. She wandered the doorway. I unrolled a clean set of sheets, made the bed with hospital corners, put a single book on the nightstand, and set my ring in the top drawer beside an old tape measure. Clear, visible decisions reduce negotiation. "Are you punishing me?" she asked finally. "No," I said, and meant it. "I'm done playing." Before lunch, I emailed a locksmith for a Monday code update on the keypad. Not a lockout, just a reset. I also set a rule with the building. Deliveries require signatures. No more packages piled against the door. I canceled the weekend trip her friends had roped us into and sent a concise note to the host couple. "We won't make it." When she saw the message go out, she sucked in air like it hurt. Games are hard to play when the audience doesn't show. I ate standing at the counter, turkey sandwich, mustard only, then cleaned the cutting board until it squeaked under the towel. She hovered, running fingers along the edge of the table, performing thoughtfulness with props. "I never meant," she began. "I know," I said, not looking up. "I don't measure intent. I measure impact." The words didn't rise, they settled. She left the kitchen for the living room and sat there, silent, trying to summon a storm that I'd have to respect. The barometer failed to move. In the afternoon, I drove to the bank. A manager in a navy dress walked me through converting the joint savings into 2 separate sub-accounts pending counsel. "Separation of responsibilities," I said. Back at the house, I put receipts in a manila folder labeled, with a Sharpie, "Boundary." Paper is honest. It does exactly what you write on it. Midpoint, I made the call I'd prepared for weeks ago. The law office answered on the second ring. "Marcus, good to hear from you. my attorney said. I'd sat across from her a month back after the third public dig and said, I might need structure. She'd given me a checklist, documentation, assets, lines not to cross if I wanted clean ground to stand on. Today I told her what had happened. She said, you're calm, stay there, and outlined next steps that were as unromantic as they were necessary, provisional agreements, disclosure prep, a template for counseling terms if I chose that path. The plan wasn't a weapon. It was a frame. When I came home, I moved my work gear to the truck and my gym bag to the front closet. I turned off location sharing. I changed the emergency contact from her to my brother. I backed up photos to a drive and slid it into the safe. Each step took a sliver of noise out of the room. The house didn't feel empty. It felt correctly sized. She appeared in the hallway wearing the dress she keeps for apologies and anniversaries, the color that used to tilt my judgment. Now it read like a billboard. Can we reset? She asked, trying to keep her voice from breaking. We can reset access and expectations, I said. Respect first. Everything else follows or doesn't. Late afternoon, she gathered some clothes and a tote of toiletries. I didn't watch her pack. I wrote 2 lists on the notepad, A and B. A. Counseling, written terms, public accountability for last night, clear rules about how we speak to and about each other. B. Separation with civility, financial clarity, a timeline that respects both lives. I placed the page on the table and left the pen beside it. No threats, just options. Choice is a mirror. People don't always like what looks back. When 6 approached, I opened the front door and set her tote beside the mat. She lifted it without ceremony. You're really not going to talk to me? She said. I am talking to you, I answered, just not in the old language. She waited for anger to show up in my face so she could fight it. She waited for grief so she could comfort it. Neither arrived. She stepped onto the porch. Evening heat pressed the street flat. Are you coming back to the party crowd? She tried. I shook my head. I don't go where I'm the prop. After she left, I ran laundry, wiped down the counters, and put my phone on the dresser in the guest room, face down, no charger. I took a book out to the porch and read 4 pages without registering a single sentence. That's fine. My mind was finally full of useful quiet. Around 9, a message climbed over the fence of the email rule. I picked up my stuff. I'll think about A or B. I didn't respond. Before bed, I walked the perimeter like I do on job sites at close. Doors, windows, valves. I stood in the doorway of the master and looked at the smooth bedspread, the 2 pillows, the simple shape of a life that had just been redrawn without shouting. I thought about the men I've watched beg for ground they already owned, and how easily a tongue can spend a bank account of respect. I didn't feel brave or cold. I felt aligned. In the guest room, I set my alarm for 5:30. Tomorrow would look like work, because it was. My life is a project, and the plan is written in pen now. She can choose path A or B. That's hers. My part is set. No chasing or explanations. I turned off the lamp. The fan hummed. Somewhere outside a car door thudded and a dog barked once, decided there was nothing to announce, and went quiet. I did the same. Consequences started almost immediately, the way a dropped tool echoes even after you've caught it. She left with the tote and the practiced apology dress, but the campaign kept working the lines. First came charm in a different outfit, memories wrapped as invitations. A morning text with an old photo of us at the lake, captioned, "We were good once." I didn't argue with the past or audition for it. No reply. Pressure wants confirmation you're still supplying attention. Silence is supply chain cutoff. By lunch, charm morphed into guilt. You embarrassed me when you walked out. I'd already answered that last night. A second message tried to draft me into PR. People are talking. Can we post something? She typed the word together 3 times like it could glue anything. Afternoon brought blame, which arrived loud and righteous. She called, and I let it roll to voicemail. I listened once. I'm controlling. I'm dramatic. I ruined a birthday. I should have played along. I should have read her tone. That's the part where men go to the mat and box shadows. I deleted the message and archived the number temporarily. You can set rules for your own piece the way you set rules for a job site. Cones around hazards, tape across no-go zones. The group chat changed, too. Last night's laughers went quiet in daylight. One friend sent a private note. That toast was a lot. Are you two okay? I answered with one sentence. We're handling it. The host's wife texted, For what it's worth, I didn't laugh. Two others posted brunch photos like nothing ever happens. People love the reset button more than they love the truth. That's fine. I only needed the truth in my house. By evening, she tried panic. A ping, I'm at your door. I opened it to the chain again. She'd redone her face into soft light and brought a tone I used to fall for. She said the words you bring to fires. Didn't mean it. Long week. Misread the room. Let's fix it right now. I stood at the gap. Calm air between us. A or B? I reminded her, nodding at the choices I'd printed and left on the table. Pick by the deadline. Her eyes flicked toward my shoulder, searching for the man who used to rush to meeting points she chose. He wasn't available. Then came the pivot every person attempts when the door doesn't move. You're being cruel. I told her the truth I stand on. This is precision. Chain slid. Door closed. Order again. The social weather shifted in small, honest ways. The host called and owned his part. I should have cut the toast mic. My bad. I told him he didn't owe me that. He said he did anyway. Her father asked to meet me for coffee. We sat in a booth with a cracked vinyl seam, the kind of place where apologies fit. He didn't defend her. He said, my daughter likes attention more than accuracy. He asked what I intended to do. I said what I've said to everyone. Two paths. Both require respect. He nodded slowly like a man agreeing with gravity. On his way out, he told me, don't let anyone make you explain this twice. I won't. Seduction made another pass, predictable as old radio. A sweater at just the right line, a perfume I used to notice across a room. She stepped into the kitchen and leaned against the counter as if kitchens forgive everything. I miss you, she murmured, trying to attach feeling to infrastructure. I wiped the counter clean and moved past her to the sink. Seduction without respect is just marketing. I don't buy what's not built right. When seduction didn't stick, she swung to narrative editing online. A long caption appeared under a filtered selfie. We all make mistakes. Don't judge what you don't know. Comments arrived like pigeons, some cooing, some pecking. She messaged me a screenshot with, see? People get it. I glanced and scrolled on. The internet is a megaphone. It can't replace a room where two chairs face a table with a notepad on it. My attorney drafted a neutral memorandum the next day, apportioning expenses, provisional access rules, a counseling framework if path A was chosen. It wasn't emotional, and that's why it mattered. I signed and sent it to her email with the subject line we'd agreed on, logistics. She replied with half questions, half poetry. Do you still love me? Do we throw away years? Can't we just forget? I didn't break Rule 3. I answered only the questions with numbers and dates. Her friends began to sort themselves in the way crowds do when lights come up. One apologized privately for laughing. Another doubled down in public, hinting I was overbearing, that I set traps. The host gently replied under her comment. I heard what I heard. The thread ended there. I found small, telling signs the old game was dying on our porch. The packages stopped arriving without warning. The drop-ins slowed to zero. Her mother's second group text never happened. When you remove the stage, performers go looking for one. The house kept its new quiet. I ran before sunrise, coffee after, email at 10. My days filled with work that returns results. Wall schedules, vendor calls, a punch list that moved left to right in pleasing, adult ways. Somewhere in that week, she sent an Amazon cart to my phone by accident. Lingerie, candles, a speaker. The irony made a tidy circle. For years, I spent money to buy tone in our house. Now she was trying to expense tone to get back in. I removed my card on the account and reread the list I'd written. Public declarations equal decisions. Midweek, her dad called again. She's upset, he said. She says you're distant. I told him, I am. He didn't argue. Good, he said, surprising me. Stay steady. Some allies are quiet. And then there are the rare ones who say exactly what you need to hear, and only once. When we hung up, I went to the safe and slid the folder labeled boundary back into place. The sound of paper against steel is very calming when you've lived through applause. The last move before the deadline was a small, desperate flourish. A bouquet on the porch with a note that tried to cast the party line as a stray spark. I brought the flowers inside because I don't punish a good object for a bad idea. I put them in water and set them near the sink. I didn't text a thank you or a rebuttal. She knows my terms. Kindness isn't a door handle, it's a light. You can leave it on without inviting anyone in. The deadline doesn't pull tragedy out of people. It reveals it or it doesn't. What her game revealed, once the laughter faded and the room cooled, was simple. Without an audience, it collapses. Friends stopped coaching. Family stopped negotiating. The house kept breathing on time. She stood where she chose to stand and realized the bridge back wasn't made of apologies spoken into a crowd. It was made of respect written down and signed. I stayed where I said I'd be. Unreachable to manipulation, fully reachable to terms. The joke had ended. The echo did, too. Now the only sound left was the clock, measuring the last inches between her decision and my next step. The deadline didn't ring like a bell. It arrived the way mornings do. Inevitable, quiet, already true before anyone admits it. At 9:58 a.m. she emailed another version of Path A, dressed up with soft words and scented promises. It was almost right, if you ignore the escape hatches. No specific consequences for future public remarks. Let's revisit boundaries after a few weeks. We don't need to tell anyone we're in counseling. It'll make people talk. What it really said was, put the furniture back where I like it, and pretend the floor didn't crack. I read it once. Then I opened the draft I'd prepared with my attorney and typed 10 words. The deadline has passed. I'm proceeding with Path B, civility. I attached the provisional separation terms, the ones with clear numbers, dates, and a quiet dignity clause that bars both of us from running commentary. I hit send. I felt the calm that follows when a job finally gets a permit number. Now the work is named, and names carry weight. Her reply staggered in waves. First, the light tap. Wait. I didn't see the time. The clock kept time with or without her. Next, the plea dressed as reason. We should try counseling first, just privately. Which meant, let me keep the audience and spare the responsibility. Then the old hook. Do you still love me? I stared at the question and recognized the trap. Define love in a way that neutralizes respect. I answered the only parts that belong to Path B. When the financial split begins, who keeps which bills? The date the locksmith will update the code. That evening, she came to the door without ringing. I saw her through the glass, hands pressed together the way people do when they want mercy to look like prayer. I opened to the chain. She whispered, I didn't mean it. I've learned those 4 words are a wish for time travel. You can't build with that. I heard you clearly. I said, same tone as the first night. We're done playing. She nodded like she understood English for the first time this month and asked for a hug. I stepped back an inch and shook my head. Decisions first. Then we see what's left. The chain stayed where it was. She let out a breath that shook her shoulders, then left the porch without looking back at the flowers she'd sent. I brought those inside later because flowers are never at fault. In the weeks after, my life simplified the way a good floor plan does. Work, gym, groceries, calls with my brother, a run before the heat, coffee on the porch after. Papers moved from draft to filed. The keypad code changed on a Monday. The family phone plan split on Wednesday. Thursday, I transferred her half of the savings into the sub-account we'd defined in the memorandum and sent proof with one line, done. People adjusted around the new shape. The host and his wife invited me to a smaller dinner. No toasts or audience for anyone's act. We ate simple food, laughed at stories with no victims, and called it a night before it turned into performance. Her dad texted once, proud of how steady you've been. He didn't mention her. A few of her friends continued to fish on social with vague posts about second chances and private pain. I let the hooks pass. Dignity clauses work even when the other person can't see them. And then there were the small ironies that show up like a wink from the universe. The boutique she loves put out a sale-coded new ERA. Her cart popped up on my phone out of habit. She'd never switched the default payment. I removed my card without comment, set the notification to ignore, and felt something in me let go that I didn't know I was still holding. Freedom doesn't always come with trumpets. Sometimes it's a setting you change at 7:43 a.m. When the separation agreement was ready for signatures, my attorney scheduled us for different hours. I showed up at 9, signed where the tabs said sign, and left without asking who was booked after me. On the way out, a couple in the lobby argued in whispers that weren't whispers. I didn't judge them. I just felt grateful my words still belonged to me. Back in the truck, I sat for a minute with my hands on the wheel and listened to the engine tick. I moved into a small loft 2 weeks later. 3rd floor, south-facing windows. A keyed entry that clicks firm and honest. The first morning I watched light climb the brick like a plan progressing on schedule. I hung a single framed photo above the desk. Not us, just a skyline I built a tower beneath once. The year I learned the difference between leadership and volume. The guest room was no longer a statement. She tried one more path before the new address settled. A late email, 1:13 a.m., subject line blank. Can we talk? I stared at the time stamp, remembered the first night's chain and the second night's breath on the porch, and all the years before where my instinct was to save bad timing from itself. I closed the laptop. Morning is when I decide things. Morning came, along with 3 messages from the same hour, soft words straining to become a key. I deleted them without reading to the end. Keys work when they fit locks. Poetry doesn't open doors. We crossed in public once, grocery store, produce aisle. She smiled and said my name like it was a season she missed. I nodded and said hello, then stepped around her cart. There are conversations you can have in front of lettuce, and there are ones you can't. I chose none. As I checked out, I noticed I was buying food for exactly one person with exactly one appetite. The receipt was short. The bags were light. I walked out feeling correctly sized again. People ask, in their careful ways, whether I'm open to reconciliation someday. If she does the work, they add, as if the syllabus for that work is obvious and close at hand. I don't offer prophecy. I say what I can say without borrowing tomorrow. Respect first. Everything else follows or doesn't. If a bridge appears built to code, I'll walk across and test the planks with my heel. Until then, I like the firmness of ground. I've learned that I don't owe explanations to crowds, nor responses to midnight sentences, nor oxygen to fires that only burn to be seen. I owe myself a home where my name isn't a prop and my effort isn't a stage cue. I owe the truth that a man can be calm and decisive at the same time. I owe silence where performance used to live. She will have a story. She may revise it until it becomes a version she can carry without wincing. That's her right. My story is simpler. A toast that declared an ending, a door that stayed chained until morning, a choice between 2 paths, and a quiet walk to the one that didn't ask me to disappear. Respect is not negotiable. It isn't loud. It doesn't bargain. It makes a home in you and asks you to keep the key where only you can reach. Last night, I sat on the loft floor with a pizza box and a folding chair, window open to the hum of a city that doesn't care about anyone's plot. The moon looked like someone had taken a bite from it. I thought about the man at the grill and the side gate that squeaked. I thought about the note titled Boundaries in my phone and the single line I added first, public endings count. Then I put the phone away, turned off the light, and let the room settle around a life that finally fits. I'm not available for anything that requires me to forget myself to keep it. That, more than any paper I signed, is the finish.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.